Welcome to the Mindful Academy podcast with me, Jennifer Askey. I'm a professional certified coach and academic workplace consultant. On this podcast, I talk about doing well personally so that you can perform well professionally. I talk about intentional career planning and about how to get out of your own way and align yourself with success. Thank you for joining me. Hi, everybody. This is Jennifer Askey. I'm your coach, and welcome to the Mindful Academy podcast. Today, I'm going to talk to you about how 2 minutes can change your life. Sounds like I'm promising a lot. Maybe I am, but this episode is dedicated to mindfulness and making decisions in advance. So get ready. First of all, I'm going to offer a trigger warning. I'm going to talk about two different use cases for mindfulness in my own life and in the lives of my clients. And one of those use cases is weight loss. So if that's not something you want to listen to, I respect that entirely. This is going to be about my journey. It's pretty personal to me. So I'm being vulnerable in this particular way, but if you don't want to listen to it, skip this episode and I'll come back with something that is definitely not body related soon enough. So we're going to start with a problem. I'm going to give you my problem use case and a client problem use case, and then talk a little bit about how mindfulness can help us take care of those problems. Okay, so the problem is impulse control. The problem is fear of missing out. The problem is when faced with some sort of scrumptious opportunity that maybe isn't good for me, can I say no if I really want to and if I really need to? So here's what happens. For me, without mindfulness, so my problem with FOMO and impulse control and saying no to scrumptious things is I'm perimenopausal. I'm gaining weight. That's sort of what perimenopausal ladies do frequently. And I don't want to do this, and I want to get rid of the weight I have gained because I have inflammatory arthritis and extra weight hurts. So it needs to go away, right? It's a health thing for me. I feel better when I don't have the weight that I'm currently carrying. So without mindfulness, what I have noticed over the past couple months is I go on a seafood diet. I see food, I eat it. I have a killer sweet tooth. Like every meal, I deserve chocolate afterwards, right? I have a lot of inner stories that get in my own way around what I deserve, or treating myself, or rewarding myself, or and one of my values is sort of luxury and lusciousness. I love those things. I love things that feel good, but when feeling good on the taste buds leads to my hips are sore because I've gained weight, my knees are sore because I've gained weight, that's not luscious anymore. That's just sucky. So there's just flat out indulging the sweet tooth too much. There's also untethered decision making. Okay, so casting about for something that scratches an itch. So sometimes people might overeat, they might overdrink, they might overshop, right? That happens. And I think about right now, rather than sort of like my wants right now in the moment, rather than my wants in a global context, right? So I don't think about future me and her needs at all, right? What I need to think about, like what is important to me globally, is that future me has knees that feel better than my knees do right now. So FOMO and untethered decision making and impulsive thinking, like just thinking about the present, those are things that for me happen around my diet and the lack of mindfulness. Now, I'm going to present you a client use case, and not just like a particular client, but this is something that I coach a lot of people about. And for me, I see how what I talk to my clients about when it comes to their work as academics, how that translates into something completely different that I'm struggling with in my own life as well. So for my clients, they frequently get scrumptious opportunities presented to them as well. They get the scrumptious opportunity of a grant collaboration, reviewing an article, answering another call for proposals, writing another this, doing another that, saying yes to that person, saying yes to that person. All of these scrumptious opportunities look and perhaps even taste like career advancement, like significance, like making a difference, climbing the ladder, getting promoted, getting tenure, right? They taste like all of those things. But when you have too many of them, right, you are also stuck in guilt and overwhelm. Your calendar looks bloated, dare I say. You feel burdened by the too much right now, can't do it all. Okay. And so in that scenario where you know, oh my gosh, there's so much on my plate, and I probably did this to myself by saying yes to and pursuing more things than are absolutely necessary. So where does FOMO and impulsive thinking come into the equation for you if that's your struggle, right? Somebody calls you up or sends you an email with a juicy CFP or with an opportunity for a grant or a conference, and you're like, oh my goodness, this opportunity will never come my way ever, ever, ever again. I have to say yes. And then fast forward 6 months, you get another great opportunity, but you're not done with the great opportunity from 6 months ago, but you still think, oh my goodness, this will never come my way ever, ever, ever again. I have to say yes. And pretty soon you have lots of opportunities that will never come your way again that you've said yes to, and now they're no longer opportunities, they're burdens. Right? I see this happening all the time. And I recall it very clearly from my first few years on the tenure track, where I was willing to do anything for everybody and anybody, because I was like, oh, well, I got to rack up all those things for tenure. Can't say no to anything, right? So that is also, it's a fear of missing out. It's a fear of missing the boat, but it's also untethered decision-making, because it's not tied to what am I pursuing here, and what are the clear criteria for success in what I'm pursuing. And even if you're not at an institution that gives you really clear tenure guidelines or really clear promotion timelines or criteria, you can easily, for yourself, come up with, okay, in the next 3 years, in the next 5 years, what are the signature accomplishments I'm driving towards? Right? And then those become the tether, or one of the tethers for your decision making. And without this, without your own tether, without your own steering of your career in a particular direction, and saying, this is what I'm going to be about, then of course you're open to anything that comes your way. And that not only can lead to a calendar that's overfull and too many commitments, but it also can lead to you feeling like you are a jack of all trades and master of none, like you are very frequently working in service of other people's signature accomplishments and not pursuing your own, right? Or if somebody calls me up or emails me this opportunity, then they're asking me and I feel really special. And so, yes, I'm going to say that I'll collaborate or I'll go for that. And then it turns out it didn't really fit into my definition of success, but I've made this other person happy. I think I see that a lot. And not just in early career faculty. I see it all along the faculty timeline with people who, tend to be people pleasers, and it's not just women. And the urge is, okay, somebody's asked, that I will say yes to, rather than carving out space for my own work and laying claim to that space, like being open and receptive to absolutely everything, right? So that's untethered decision-making when it comes to academic commitments. And then there's the thinking about right now in the moment, rather than thinking about future you. So where I'm thinking about future me's, you need to think about future you and your bandwidth. How many hours a day do you have? How many commitments are already on the go? Are you planning for the next semester or the next academic year in a scenario where nothing ever goes wrong? There's never downtime in the course management system. None of your students falls apart. None of your family members get sick and require you. There's not another global pandemic, right? All of these things. Are you planning for the best possible circumstances without adding in some padding and grace for downtime, for wiggle room in a syllabus, because you always need wiggle room. You can't, very rarely do you go through 13 weeks or 15 weeks and hit everything right on the nose, right? I have a friend who knows that like after Thanksgiving, I need a couple days, right? After spring break, we all need a couple days. People get sick. I always get laryngitis at this point in the semester, right? What does experience tell you about planning for what comes next? And are you using past you to help take care of future you? Or are you thinking about what sounds really good right now and making decisions that future you is going to have to make good on, even when the circumstances are less than ideal? So that's the issue. We have fear of missing out. We have untethered decision-making, and we have only a focus on like immediate gratification rather than on long-term thinking that's values-based and goals-based. So here's where the magic of mindfulness comes in. I'm going to read you a quote that is contributed to author unknown, and maybe I could go hunt this down again, but I think I've only ever seen it attributed to unknown. Between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So I want to talk about this space, right, between stimulus and response. We have the power in that space between stimulus, request comes in, and response, I answer yes, right? Stimulus, walk past bakery with macaron on display. Response, I go in and buy half a dozen, right? Between stimulus and response, there is a space. The issue that most of us have, and this is where mindfulness is key, is we don't even experience that space. We're not equipped, we're not practiced in recognizing that small gap between stimulus and response and resting in it long enough to make a conscious choice, a values-based, deliberative choice. A coaching colleague of mine is a rep for an EQ assessment called 6 Seconds. And this is an emotional intelligence assessment that is very closely tied to mindfulness research that says that that gap is 6 seconds. That you have 6 seconds to stop yourself from going down path A and picking path B. I have talked before on this podcast back in season 1 about the Positive Intelligence Program. And that entire program rests on the premise of identifying, recognizing, and capturing that gap and using it with purpose. So if we think of stimulus and response as neurons that fire together, wire together, right? So see bakery, want donut. Smell cigarette smoke, want a cigarette. Friday night, want a drink, right? Whatever it is. Email from student, must answer immediately. Whatever the stimulus and response is, the more often the stimulus leads to this particular response, the more we're wiring a mental pattern in our mind that, of course, the stimulus means that I provide this response. In order to break that connection and connect the stimulus with a new decision, we need to mindfully recognize, oh, that's happening again. Stop. Collaborate, listen. No, never mind. We need to stop And you can only do that if you are mindful of your reactions and responses, right? If the stimulus response is automatic, it is mindless. So how do you become mindful of those things? Through present moment, non-judgmental awareness, which is basically the definition of mindfulness, grounded in your body. Because what you will notice is, let's say you pick the problem of, I say yes to everybody all the time. And I know I need to stop doing that, but it's so hard, right? First, you recognize, this is my problem. I say yes to everybody. I don't tether my decisions to any values or goals that I have. I am just a people-pleasing machine, okay? So you recognize that. And then maybe you spend a week or two paying attention to what happens when a request comes in and you automatically say yes. What does that feel like? Maybe you've already done it. You've already answered the email. You've already said yes. You've already fixed somebody else's problem. And then you go, oh, wow, I did that thing. Then you have an opportunity to say, okay, how did that feel in my body? Like, did my chest get tight? Did I get agitated? What if I think about not doing it? What if I think about telling that student no, saying no to that committee, saying, I'm sorry, I'm not available to review that? What happens? Like, do I just get like, oh, no, 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 no. Where does that no, 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 no live? Does it live in your gut? Does it live in your chest? Does it live in your hips? Do your hands get tingly? That fear, that scarcity mindset, whatever it is, it has a place in your body. You might not be aware of it. I think it takes a long time to sometimes cultivate this bodily awareness, but it's there. Sometimes it's an urge up here, like, oh, fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it. And so it's this like drive to action, right? As opposed to a drive to reflection, a drive to stay still and notice. Okay, so first you recognize it, and then and I think this is one of the things that the Positive Intelligence program taught me that I think is so valuable, is you make some decisions in advance and you practice in advance. So if I want to practice not solving all of my students' problems, I need to set up scenarios for myself a couple times a day and say, okay, I'm going to imagine the next time those emails come in, not immediately answering them, grounding myself in what I believe is my work and what I believe is the students' work and what the pedagogy of this course is, and then either provide an intentional mindful response or no response at all. And in order to rest in that gap between the emails coming in and you answering, in order to rest in that gap between me putting my dishes in the dishwasher and me going to the pantry for a bit of chocolate, right? I need to be aware of how often it happens, what the physical pattern is of me completing that action, what the emotional pattern is of me completing that action. And I need to practice, not when I'm in the middle of it, saying, okay, the next time I'm done with that meal, instead of immediately going for a few chunks of chocolate, I'm going to have another glass of water. Or I'm going to make a cup of tea or a cup of decaf, or maybe I'll walk around the block or do something else. What am I going to do instead? And I practice that mentally, maybe even rehearse it physically if it needs physical rehearsing, but you practice it mentally in advance. And then you practice it in real time. And it is a practice, it won't be perfect, but it's taking advantage of that gap. So if we put this all together, we have a problem we want to solve for. FOMO, untethered thinking, thinking only of the now and not of future consequences. And our next step is to set our standards. So we're going to make some decisions in advance. You could say, for example, during the course of an academic year, I will review X number of articles. I will answer Y number of calls for proposals, and I will collaborate on or pursue Z number of grants, right? I might limit my intake of a certain thing, right? I might I'm tempted to say no flour, but like, I don't even know how that works in the world. That sounds crazy to me, but right, I could limit a quantity of something. So I'm limiting the number of pieces of chocolate I can have in a week or in a day or something like that. Okay, so you can set hard limits for yourself if you think you can work within those. I've discovered with myself that I can set hard limits and then just ignore them because I'm the boss of me. And it's really easy to ignore that decision that I made a while ago, because right now I want it. Right now, I feel the urge to make somebody else happy. It is hard to go against my wiring, right? It is hard to say no to something sweet. It is hard to say no to the scrumptious opportunity if we have wired ourselves to love it. Okay, so the other option is to put in a decision filter, a decision tree, right? A pathway. So, do I need this? This thing that I'm being asked to produce, do I need it for my goals? Do I need it for my success? Do I have time? Can I do it right now and just get it taken care of? Can I do the same thing again next week? If it's students or colleagues, can I do it for everybody who asks me, right? Do I have time to really answer this query? Do I really have time to do this kind of work? Is it part of my job? Okay. So do I need it? Do I have time? Does it align with my definition of success? Does it align with what future me wants or what I want for future me? If future you wants promotion, if future you wants tenure, if future you wants an award or a grant, is what you're being asked to do or what is in front of you as a scrumptious opportunity, does it feed that vision? Excuse me. Does it amplify other good work? One of the phenomenon that I notice pretty often when I'm talking to my colleagues is that a really cool opportunity will come their way. And as they're talking about it, they'll notice that it isn't even like going down the same stream as most of their work. It's taken a huge pivot. And unless taking a huge pivot is part of your plan, then what does it mean to take on work that doesn't amplify what you're already doing? Right? And what might it mean to take on work that does amplify what you're already doing? Does that make it easier? Does that double the return on the investment of your time and your energy? Right? So think about whether it amplifies and resonates with what you're already doing and who you are becoming. And the last one is the dream opportunity. So for example, I can say I'm really going to restrict sugars and flour products and carbs because for my particular physiology, that seems to be what helps me lose weight. And then November will come around and it will be my birthday and it will be Thanksgiving in America. October here in Canada, Thanksgiving will come around and Halloween. So October, November, December, like that's tough. And it gets dark up here. I live in Edmonton. It starts getting really dark and staying dark a really long time. And let me tell you, I love pumpkin pie with all of my heart and soul. Like every bit of me adores pumpkin pie. And I'm not going to say no to pumpkin pie. Now, do I need to eat half a pie a day? Probably not. Have I done that on occasion? Spread out between breakfast, desserts, lunches? Yes, I have. Do I need to? No. Right? So that's an occasion. I'm not going to say no to birthday cake. I'm not going to say no to pumpkin pie because I want to enjoy my life. If the dream collaboration, the dream grant, the dream job comes your way, of course you can throw caution to the wind and do it. Some things maybe are once in a lifetime or once in a blue moon, right? So dream opportunity, totally fine. So, but set those filters in advance and practice running decisions through them. Do I need it? Do I have time? Does it amplify current work? Does it align with my success goals? Or is it really such a unicorn opportunity that saying no would be foolish? And that's not hard. That isn't a lot of questions to ask about decisions that are maybe super time consuming. I think for things like hanging out in your email and answering little queries all day long, you can change the way you relate to that with the first couple questions. I actually don't have time for this, and I actually don't need it. It doesn't mean you ignore your email, but it means that you're not in there all the time doing little bits of work and fragmenting your effort. You batch it, you don't prioritize it, you don't give it your best brain hours, right? So putting a set of filters in, like you're panning for gold, right? There's the coarse filter, and then it gets finer and finer and finer. And it's only the really great stuff that you're left with. And all of the detritus just falls through in successive layers of filters. So how to do that once you put the system together? So I'll tell you how I do it, and I'll provide a couple easy alternatives. So for me, the best way to do this is, well, the absolute grade A #1 best way for me to do this is twice a day to meditate for 15 to 20 minutes, 15 to 30 minutes. Like that would be the ideal. My life isn't ideal. I'm fundamentally a bit lazy. So that would be my ideal. What actually works and is doable for me is getting up in the morning in time to meditate. And sometimes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, that's okay, especially if it is paired with mindful movement. So if you take a walk in the morning, if you do 15 minutes of morning yoga or Pilates, there are all sorts of, and I mean, even if you go to morning kickboxing class or step aerobics, it doesn't matter. If you are using that time in your body to be in your body, right? If you're doing yoga or Pilates or kickboxing or whatever, are you making mind-muscle connections? Are you becoming aware of like where that shoulder blade is? And when people say, drop your shoulders or firm up your core from your belly button, like, are you making those connections? Because if you're doing that work, you're not catastrophizing the future, you're not regretting the past, you actually are in the present moment, grounded in your body. And if that's something you already do in the morning, a run or a class or something, can you then pair with that an intention of, how am I bringing my best self to bear today? Who needs me today to be my best self? I need me to be my best self. Do other people need me to be my best self? My partner, my children, my pet, my students, my colleagues. What does best self mean? And so if you're grounding into your values, into your goals, into what success means for you, how does that then enable you during the course of the day to, because you started the day by making the connection between mind and heart and body. Can you make that connection more times during the day, right? Go to work, at home, or at the office. Maybe you don't dive directly into your email because you've already asked yourself, how am I bringing my best self to work today? And so you do a little bit of your best work. Then you're in your email, but you're strengthening that intention muscle, that mindfully aware of the present moment muscle. And maybe you'll recognize more and more, oh, I see these emails and I really just want to react immediately because it feels good. It feels like work. It feels productive. But I know at the end of the day, if I've spent 4 hours doing that, I find myself wondering what I did with my time. So since I know that, I'm not going to just beaver away at my email. I'm going to give it its dedicated time, and then I'm going to move on to other good work, right? So as you encounter stimuli during the day, your present moment awareness muscle, if you're regularly flexing your present moment awareness muscles, for example, in morning meditation, in morning mindful movement, it allows you to notice your urge to react to the stimuli, right? And then you are at choice. Oh, I'm noticing the urge to react. I have a choice to make here. And this is where research is interesting. So I told you about 6 seconds and the EQ test with that same name. Lisa Feldman Barrett, who wrote a book called How Emotions Are Made, has, and she's, I think, based in Waterloo, Ontario, at the University of Waterloo. She has studies that show that our emotional responses, whether it's fear or excitement or lust or whatever, our emotional responses pass through our physical body in about 90 seconds. So for example, if we want to go to my relationship with chocolate, if I finish a meal, and I'm like, time for some chocolate, I know that if I sit with that for 90 seconds and don't indulge it and don't obsess on it, chocolate, nom, 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 right? It will pass. So somewhere between 6 seconds and 90 seconds, depending on whose research you listen to. I really like the 90 seconds from Lisa Feldman Barrett. I think it's really current research. I think it really takes the embodied nature of our emotional responses into account. But 90 seconds to go from, oh, I just need to do this, to, well, let me think about whether I need to do this or not, and choose intentionally. That's less than 2 minutes to fundamentally change the way you make decisions, to fundamentally change the results you get from the time that you invest in things. And I think that's magic. So if you are not currently a mindfulness practitioner, but you are interested in it, I will be your biggest cheerleader. And there are a lot of ways to learn mindfulness. There are a lot of ways to spend money to learn mindfulness. And I'm going to tell you about 2 completely free ways to learn mindfulness. One is an app created by the Institute for Healthy Minds at the University of Wisconsin at Madison. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned it before, but it bears repeating again. It's called the Healthy Minds app, available on Android and Apple. It's a blue circle with a lowercase h and m in it. And it is a full mindfulness curriculum with like 5 to 8 minute lessons, followed by mindfulness practices. And it just builds it through step-by-step, research-based. The main researcher at the Institute for Healthy Minds, whose name is escaping me at the moment, he is one of the researchers who started putting electrodes on monks back when functional MRIs were brand new. Like, he's been looking at meditating brains for decades at this point. So this is very, very research-based. And it's targeted not at monks. It's actually targeted, like the program got developed to help undergraduate students. So you don't need to know anything to go in, and it's also not dumbed down. Like, it's just a really, really solid curriculum that I'm a big fan of. And it's 100% free because it's grant funded. The other free thing is an insight meditation retreat. So offered by the Vipassana Foundation, Vipassana, Vipassana. All across the world, they have meditation centers that offer 10-day silent meditation retreats that are free or pay what you can. They don't even ask for money until the end of the retreat. Now it's jumping into the deep end, right, with both feet. But I don't think they insist that you have mindfulness training before you get in. I did it about a month before the pandemic hit, and boy, howdy, it was transformational in lots of ways. And some of them, if you live in a really densely populated area, can have waiting lists for years. But let me tell you, Southern Alberta in February, that one always has spots. So come meditate with us. But again, very accessible. And if you want to learn more about that, you can look them up online. I'd be happy to answer questions based on what I have done. I know other people who've done them. And they're, like with a lot of things, you get out what you put in, and it's a pretty serious endeavor, but it's a great way to establish, like, oh, what does it feel like to really be in this contemplative space in my body. So I hope that this provided additional insight into why I call this podcast the Mindful Academy. And that for me, mindfulness started out maybe as a way to like manage my emotions and manage my work. But the more time I spend with it, the more I see other ways to bring mindfulness to bear in my life. And I recognize in my clients some things that are just universal issues that we have as humans with decision making. And I think there's a lot of room for mindfulness to be transformational in this space. So it has been a pleasure sharing this with you today. Thank you so much for giving me your ears for a short amount of time. Comments, questions to me at jennifer@jenniferaskey.com. I'm the only one here reading my email. No AI over here, no VA in my email, just me. More than happy to talk. Until next time, take good care of yourself. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Mindful Academy podcast. For questions about this episode, suggestions for future episodes, or to request a consultation with me, email me at jennifer@jenniferaskey.com. This episode was recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 lands. The songs included in the intro and outro for this podcast are Heartache by Silent Partner and Piano Store by Jimmy Fontanez of Media Right Productions, both sourced through the audio library. Thank you so much for listening.